What's going on, everybody? It's the Indoor Hunter, and today we're going to be talking about one of the most underutilized tools in the Hunter Call of the Wild. And that tool, of course, is the shooting range. It's free, it's found on Hirschfelden right here. Once you've got it discovered, you can fast travel right to it, and I use this thing way more than I'd like to admit. Now, if you're one of those that's new to the game and had no idea that this existed, let me know in the comments below, because I really don't see anybody ever utilize the shooting range, and it really is a useful tool. Now, you may ask yourself, well, why is it useful if I know, for example, we've got the 300. We zeroed for 150 meters. We're shooting 150 meters. That bullet is going to go exactly where I'm aiming. But what happens when an animal's at an intermediate range? Now we're at 200 meters. We can't zero for 200. Can we aim straight on? Well, now we know with the 300 at 200 meters, zeroed for 150, we're pretty accurate. What about the M1? Same range, same everything. Let's see what happens here. Shooting pretty much the same as the 300. What about the Maradi? Ooh, wrong scope. Again, 0 for 150. The Maradi is actually shooting incredibly low. Incredibly low. This is the point of the shooting range, though. Guns that are like this, that don't exactly fit the bill, you can really practice on where those rounds are going. We can kind of tell that it's shooting about here. There we have it. Bullseye. Now let's look at the 223. See where it's hitting at 200 meters. It's shooting basically dead on, but this is important to know. Let's find out where the 223 is hitting at. Now, we're obviously not going to be doing this for every gun, but you can see it's actually a little bit lower than the bigger rifles, which makes sense. It's a smaller caliber with not as much powder. Let's change out these weapons for some more common ones just to see if there's any difference or variation. All right, so now we've got the 7mm Regent Magnum, the 7mm Malamar, we've got the 308 Stalker, and of course the M1. I kind of want to compare and contrast the 308 versus 30-06 here in the shooting range, but let's keep it zeroed for 200, just because I feel like that's a pretty good safe distance, and I'd kind of like to see just how different, if at all, these weapons are shooting. They're the same exact caliber in theory. They're going to be shooting the exact same place, but we don't know. We've not been here yet. Let's see what happens. Dead on, right on the money with the 7mm Empress, or the 7mm Regent, my apologies. Let's go ahead and zero for 150 here on the 7mm, and hopefully we hit the same area. That seemed to be a little low. That could have been user error. Let's shoot again. Again, just a little bit low. Maybe that first shot was just us. Let's go ahead and clear that, get rid of the garbage here. We're shooting dead on the money at 200 meters with the 7mm Magnum. And the 7mm Malamar seems to be doing the same thing as well. It might actually be shooting just a little bit lower. Look at that, folks. Yeah, it's shooting lower than the 7mm Regent Magnum. You would think, again, they're the same caliber, they're shooting the same, and this doesn't seem that crazy. You're not going to miss your target at all at 200 meters. The problem is, though, once you start stepping off, that's where it really becomes the issue. So let's go ahead and set back to 250 meters here, and I can show you what I'm talking about. So I know we're going to have to compensate for range. Nailed it, no problem whatsoever. This comes from, well, doing this. I know exactly where that bullet's going to go, but again, just to show how dramatic this bullet drop and change and difference is, again, 7mm Empress Magnum. We're going to aim dead on. And at 250 meters, we hit almost exactly where we were aiming at. No variation to the bullet drop yet. That's actually pretty important right now. And truthfully, the 7mm Regent, accuracy-wise, is actually winning out over the 7mm because it doesn't have as much bullet drop. So let's try it again. 0 for 150. Look at how much that bullet drops. That will cause you to miss if you don't have zeroing unlocked and you're just always 0 for 150 because, for example, let's go ahead and reach out here to 300. Aim dead on. Look at how low that is. That's the difference between a trophy in the trophy lodge and a track job right there. Let's look at the 7mm Empress once again. Again, shooting at 300 meters here. That was kind of pathetic actually. That was a user error there. Look at how far low that's shooting. That's still a kill shot. So now we've discovered that the 7mm Regent Magnum shoots much, much flatter than the 7mm Malmar. This is new to me. We just discovered this real time while we recorded this video, and you can see now kind of where the picture's getting a little bit clearer how important this shooting range is. I never knew this. This is literally, I just discovered this the second we did that experiment there. I had no idea the 7mm Empress was going to be shooting so much flatter than its bolt action counterpart. That's something to consider in the future. Let's go ahead and pull out the 308 and the M1 here. And again, we may just experiment with the 308 bolt action just to kind of see. So starting out 0 for 150, targets at 300 meters. I just want to see bullet drop. Shoots pretty low, very, very close to the 7mm bolt action. Let's try out our handy dandy M1. That's an unfair advantage, somewhat. Now, obviously, when you use the Argus scope, it will change the ballistics a little bit, and that's even more practice that you're going to have to do in order to get proficient with that weapon. Now, for me personally, there's no benefit, or there's no substitute to actually being out there where we're really trying these shots. But this shooting range is going to give you that ability now that we know where we're hitting. So for example, we're shooting pretty low, just a hair lower, so indiscriminately lower that it's shooting basically the same as a 308 at 300 meters, 0 for 150. But now we know where exactly we need to aim in order to hit those 300-meter shots without actually having to zero. And again, the reason this is important is because maybe, you know, you're in a rush, you see the trophy of a lifetime, it's 300 meters out there, and you've got half a second to make that decision to shoot or not, because he's getting ready to walk behind some bushes, go away, something's going to happen. Time and time again, I can't tell you how many times I've had those shot opportunities where if I hadn't been to the shooting range and know exactly where my round's going to go, in that last split second, because especially now when I go to 0, I'm back down to 75. I gotta, oh no, I'm screwed up. You don't have to worry about that if you know exactly where your bullet's gonna go. When you're 0 for 150, it makes it a little bit easier. Now, obviously, when things are closer, the exact opposite happens. We're 0'd for 150 here. We're at 50 meters. We should, in theory, be shooting just a little high, but not much. Let's go even further though, 350 meters. Now this is where the guns really are all different, and this is where your firearm choice in the game really comes to the top. All right, so now we're 0 for 350. We've got the M1 again. We're 0'd actually for 300 now. We're gonna reset the target, and you may think, well, 350, that's a long way to shoot. If you've got if you're a grinder and you've got your zones set up correctly, a lot of your zones, this is probably the range that you're now shooting. You need to get used to it. So we're 0 for 300. M1. We're shooting just a tad low, not terrible. Again, we wouldn't miss that animal. That would be a kill shot. Unless, of course, we were getting highly particular and specifically going for, let's say, a neck shot or a brain shot or just over the right shoulder blade of that doe that you don't want to shoot, but the other guy's just not giving you that opportunity. Now that we know exactly where our bullets are going, we can compensate for that and hit bullseyes every single time. Just out of my own curiosity, because we did figure it out real time, let's go ahead and shoot the 308 here and see just where it's hitting at. Again, we're aiming dead on. That's a pretty significant bullet drop. Fairly consistent where it's hitting. Just low, which ballistically it seems the M1 and the 308 are pretty heckin' close. But again, it's completely shocked me how much more accurate and flat shooting the 7mm region is compared to the Malmar. Now, out of my own curiosity, we've got the 30-06 Eckers. We're going to be comparing it directly to the M1. We were 0'd for 300. Let's set the range for 350. Get that target reset. Let's see what happens here. Not bad. 30-06 shoots surprisingly flat in this game, so it's a good caliber. But I'm very curious to see if our M1 counterpart here is shooting somewhere different. Doesn't appear so. Shooting pretty good. Again, now we've got the 308. 0 for 300, shooting at 350. It's even more flat shooting, seemingly, than the M1. That was a little high, but we hit right where we were aiming at. Again, fairly consistent here. At 350 meters, we're shooting pretty good. What about the 308? Semi-automatic. It's shooting so much lower. Again, folks, this is the difference between a heart shot and simply wounding the animal at this range. It would appear, accuracy-wise, that the 350-meter range is that weird intermediate range where bullets start doing funny stuff. And the same can be said at the 250-meter range. That's a video for a different time. One last thing I kind of want to test out here is the bolt action 300 against the semi-automatic 300 and both variants of the 338. All right, we're back with the 300. Range is 350 meters, 0 for 300. Shooting fairly close. We're all but dead on at that range, which is kind of surprising. This gun shoots extraordinarily flat. Let's see if the bolt action counterpart is just as good, if not better. It's actually shooting a little bit lower. Let's actually get a group here just to kind of make sure that wasn't a fluke. Shooting just a little low to the right. Little low. Ballistically, I would say that they're actually identical, which is good news. Let's switch over to the new 338. Not as ballistically accurate as the 300. It's shooting fairly low. Again, at this range, if you're aiming for a heart or something in particular, if you're sitting there grinding real world stuff, you got to shoot around a tree, that's going to make the difference between hitting the animal and completely missing it. Again, depending though, if this is your favorite weapon, get out here to the shooting range, see exactly where you're hitting at. That way you just know, okay, we're at 350 meters. That means I got to aim just a little high. and we're going to be making perfect shots every time. But now I'd like to compare this to its single shot counterpart, just to kind of see. The 7mm was astounding how different. I'd say that's a pretty consistent group right there. Let's go ahead and switch back to the bolt gun. It's shooting just a hair lower. And maybe not. Maybe it's right there with it. Again, some of this is user error, but we can see that bullet drop pretty consistently, and the single shot seems to edge it out just a little bit. But you guys can see here, long story short, it's very important, at least I think so, to get out here, test out these ranges, you know, play around with it. We can shoot all the way out to 450 or 500 meters, which makes no sense because animals don't even render that far. Again, 0 for 300. We're just see here at 500. Not even on target. We're probably going to have to aim about there. I was pretty close. But you spend enough time in the shooting range and you kind of get familiar with the weapons that you're using a lot, you're going to kind of know where those bullets are going to go. And this is going to help you guys in the long run be able to hit stuff that sometimes you might not be able to without visiting the shooting range. Let me know if you guys use this thing or not, if it's just there and you just ignore it. Again, I was kind of shocked to see how different those two 7mm were. There's obviously a plethora of weapons that I've simply not tested. Now, one significant difference outside of ballistics when it comes to the guns is bullet velocity. That, unfortunately, is something that is very hard to test. Until they add some sort of moving target in the shooting range, there's no way we can consistently or scientifically test it because, well, you know, critters don't run the same line every single time, and it's hard to get the exact range. And, you know, some guns that are super accurate have such a low bullet velocity that the second the animal moves, you're going to miss the shot. So there's a ton of nuance to this, but the shooting range really is a great visual tool when you use it to see exactly where those rounds are going. That way you can be more accurate going ahead.